Good afternoon, and thanks for joining Washington, D.C.-based Jennifer Schaus & Associates and our Get FAR Cited in 2020 complimentary webinar series. As you know, the FAR Federal Acquisition Regulations is the rulebook that the federal government must follow when making purchases. Our webinar series pulls from contracting experts to explain each part of the FAR. It is complimentary and recorded. We will post all of the recordings on our website and YouTube channel, where we have over 300 contracting webinars available for download. A special thanks to our webinar partner in the series, the National Veteran Small Business Coalition Education Foundation. Please visit their website to learn more about the organization. We would also like to thank our friends at Open the FAR for their sponsorship. If your organization is interested in sponsoring the series or one part, please contact hello@jenniferschaus.com. And a little bit about us. We work with primarily large businesses to help navigate the federal marketplace. We work with both product and service companies as well as software firms. Our clients span the globe and include publicly traded organizations in a variety of sectors, providing market analysis reports, project administration, contract vehicle assistance, and more. Services can also be built into a training course for your team. Learn more about us on our website. Now let's move on and learn a bit about today's speaker, Barrett O'Connor. You can find her contact information here. And today we are covering FAR Part 3 with Barrett. Barrett, thank you for joining us today. We're thankful for your participation in the series. The floor is now yours. Let me know, let me be ready for the next slide.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome everyone. And I am going to start to discuss Part 3 of the FAR, Improper Business Practices and Personal Conflicts of Interest. Why does FAR Part 3 exist? The taxpayer money is used to pay contractors, so obviously they have an interest in protecting the government trust. The federal government wants contractors to be honest, ethical, know and follow the law, and get awarded work because of their capabilities, not because of friendships, relationships. So this section for the FAR defines regulations that make sure this happens. It's no excuse if you are a small business, you still must follow these laws. What does FAR Part 3 require? It requires that you know and follow the law and that you do business ethically. Having the capability to perform, including to perform the contract, including the technical, operational, administrative, and financial ability to complete the contract is critical. And it depends on the size of the contract. And depending on the size of the contract, you may have to report to the government if a violation occurs. How does it work? Laws and regulations define what is required. The FAR then has contract clauses with these laws and regulations that are included in the contract as part of the contract requirement. So failing to follow the laws, the regulations, and your contract requirements can result in penalties and consequences. Some of the penalties and consequences to be concerned about are criminal and civil penalties, suspension, debarment from all of government contracting, incurring financial costs to defend against concerns, business interruptions, a loss of non-government funds or work funds, and potentially even loss of reputation. So how does the FAR work? One of the things the contractors have to certify under penalty of perjury that they follow the laws. And the contracts include the terms and the conditions in the contract. Turn the slide, please. The FAR tells contractors with contracts worth more than worth $5 million or more that they must have an ethics and compliance program in place as defined by the regulations. But other contractors should develop a program as well. Why is that? Because it helps you to follow the law. If you want to get purchased by another contractor or another organization, in the process of due diligence, they are going to be looking for an ethics and business compliance plan. It also helps your employees to follow the law. Here's what it requires. You require a written code of conduct, a culture promoting integrity and compliance. You'll also need a program owner of your ethics and compliance program, whether an individual or a department, but someone who can be responsible for training on the policies and procedures and foster the expectation of integrity within the corporate environment. You will also need internal reporting systems. There must be consequences for violating policies and a method to assess the risk of non-compliance. It is critical to have internal controls to prevent and detect illegal activity and to review the effectiveness of your program. Next slide. The FAR tells contractors that they cannot take action against employees who raise concerns under FAR 3.9 in protecting whistleblowers. But in fact, you should encourage your employees to bring their concerns forward to you. And when they do, you should try to investigate and resolve their issues. If they go to the government, you not only have to let them do that, but you cannot do anything to prevent them. Contractors cannot discharge, demote, or discriminate against an employee as retaliation for being a whistleblower. So you want them to encourage them to come to you. If they go to the government will investigate complaints and issue written reports and written findings, and they will submit the written findings to the agency head of the contract involved in the complaint. Contractors cannot do anything to prevent whistleblowers from filing their complaints. They cannot require employees to sign confidentiality agreements or restrict their rights to report fraud, waste, and abuse related to a federal contract. Next slide. Gifts and gratuities. Under FAR 3.2 and 3.101, generally you cannot give executive branch employees, for example, HHS, DoD employees, any gift or really anything of value at all. And they cannot ask for anything. You can also, you could not have someone else do something for you and for your firm that you are not allowed to do. There's generally a $20 and below requirement for gifts. So contractors cannot offer, promise, authorize gifts, meals, favors, anything of value to obtain new business or retain business, influence a government person's actions or decisions, gain any improper advantage, generally nothing more than a $20 or below requirement. The limitations are even stricter when members of Congress and their staff are involved. So in the event that you have a government colleague that's having a birthday or getting married, and you think, oh, it'd be so nice to give a Starbucks card for some coffee, that would be prohibited because all gift cards are considered cash. And no matter how small, cash is never allowed as a means to provide a gift to a government colleague. Same with if a colleague's getting married, stay away from giving gifts. There is an exception if you have a truly personal, long-term standing relationship or friendship with a government person and beyond work. And in those rare situations, you can continue to give gifts, normal gifts for birthdays and such. If you have always given people gifts and your friend is always giving you back a gift, then that's kind of a good test to determine whether or not your personal relationship with this individual would allow you an exception to the rules to not accept gifts and gratuities. Next slide. Fair competition. The FAR and many other laws tell you that you cannot be anti-competitive, that you cannot compete unfairly by agreeing with other contractors on pricing, agreeing to decide who will bid on certain work and who will take a pass on that work. You can't agree to give subcontractors or primes some kind of favor or benefit for agreeing to partner with you. You cannot restrict your subs from selling to the government in most instances. This behavior is all antitrust type stuff, and you should avoid it. Fair competition means no anti-competitive behavior. So, prices must be set independently of other costs. And any kind of agreement directly or indirectly with other contractors is collusion and prohibited. Encouraging, asking, agreeing to have another contractor submit or not submit an offer is also prohibited. It also means no kickbacks. There can't be any arrangements between contractors to provide something of value to another contractor in exchange for favorable treatment in a bidding process. For instance, there shouldn't be any low interest loans, favorable pricing, set forth in FAR 3.502. You may be required to disclose to the government the methods used to calculate your prices in order to ensure that no anti-competitive behavior has taken place. The regulation also prohibits disclosing pricing directly or indirectly to competitors. Limitations on restricting subcontractors for selling to the government are also set forth in FAR 3.503. Next slide. The FAR tells you that you cannot submit a below market or below cost offer with the intent to make up the difference at a later date with follow-on work or with change orders. And that is what's described in FAR 3.501, buying in. So this is never a good pricing strategy. You can go low if you want, but you just cannot plan to make it up later. So buying in means submitting an offer below anticipated costs, expecting to recoup those costs by increasing the contract amount after award with unnecessary or excessively priced change orders, for example, or for being awarded follow-on contracts at artificially high prices. Since buying in may decrease competition or performance, the government is interested in seeing that that doesn't happen, and they must make sure that the contractor does not recover its artificially low costs. And they do that by minimizing the opportunity for buying in, by seeking price commitments, and developing other safeguards to prevent this. Next slide. Procurement integrity under FAR 3.104. The government wants procurements to be fair and for all bidders to have the same access to information. So it is a crime to try and get and to use non-public government information or non-public competitor procurement sensitive information to try and win work. The government investigates this a lot. Even having access to non-public information may disqualify you from bidding on certain work. Even if the government wants to give you the information that is non-public, or even if you get it accidentally, you walk into a meeting room and you sit down at a table and there it is, source selection information right there. It is, that's no defense. You will need to take steps to remedy that. The procurement integrity assures that procurements are done fairly and transparently. Not only is it prohibited by the FAR, but there are other laws and regulations as well. As I mentioned, the government is active in investigating and prosecuting these violations, and it is criminal. Procurement integrity violations are a common reason for a bid protest. And again, it prohibits using and even having access to non-public government and non-public contractor information, or limits recruiting and hiring government employees while government employee has duties related to the contractor to, in some way, become privy to non-public information and obtain a competitive advantage. Next slide. The information that is protected by procurement integrity laws includes government source selection plans, government technical evaluation plans, cost estimates, contractor cost or pricing, data information, tools, methodologies, or data that a business creates, like intellectual property. For these reasons, the contractors must mark their non-public information to assure it's protected from disclosure, whether accidental or what. Next slide, please. The FAR lists a lot of costs that are unallowable to charge to the government. The costs cannot be in your direct or your indirect costs. One of those is cost of lobbying and cost of influencing the government to try to award you work. Now, lobbying is legal and allowed. You just cannot charge the government for it. and you need to file the proper disclosures. But regardless, your time and costs for trying to influence the government to select you as a contractor is never allowed to be charged to the government. Contractors must certify that no federal funds will be used or have been used to influence or attempt to influence any executive branch employee or any legislative branch employee or member of Congress in connection with awarding a contract. As I said, essentially this means you can't use federal funds to lobby, but it is more broad. You need to have financial controls to make sure that you can comply with this regulation and make sure you can allocate and know where your funds are going. Lobbying means communicating with legislative or executive branch officials to influence government activity, including negotiation and award of federal contracts. If you're lobbying, you must register as a lobbyist. These regulations apply not only to individuals, but also to organizations. Next slide, please. Personal conflicts of interest under FAR 3.6 and 3.11. Personal conflict means a situation in which an employee doing an inherently government function has a financial interest or activity or relationship that could impair the ability to act impartially. If you have a personal, business, or financial relationship with a government person, for example, if you have a business with a government person, or if a government person is one of your relatives, if you seek to get work in that organization, you need to consider the conflict laws, and you need to consider whether you can even pursue the work. And you most likely will need to disclose the relationship in your bids. Government employees and contractors cannot compromise their judgment and objectivity. They must disclose relationships outside income, investments, loans, travel. Remember, in these situations, an appearance of a conflict of interest is as damaging as an actual conflict of interest. This FAR clause is directed to contracts where the contractor performs an acquisition-related function, but many other laws prohibit conflicts of interest in any government contract. Generally, contracts cannot be awarded to contractors owned and controlled by a government employee. Conflicts are broadly defined as personal relationships, business relationships, financial incentives. They can include real estate dealings, research funding, investments, copyrights, patents, etc. It's important for contractors to have good procedures in place to screen employees for potential conflicts of interest. Next slide, please. Contingent fees are prohibited by FAR 3.4. Generally, you must be very, very careful if you hire a business development person to help you develop business with the government, and you plan to pay a commission to this person or organization if you win the work. Why? Well, because it looks bad. It looks like you are paying an incentive to get you work, and it suggests maybe by whatever means. So the FAR says you cannot do it unless the person or entity you are going to pay a contingent fee to is in fact a bona fide agency. A bona fide agency is essentially the person or entity. It means that the person or entity that you're using is legitimate and knows how to follow the laws around it. A bona fide agency is established commercial agency maintained by the contractor to secure business that does not exert or promise to exert improper influence to obtain the government contracts. So if the business or entity is legit and knows the rules and how to follow the law around this, and then the contingent fees are not prohibited in these situations. But if they don't, you can get into trouble right along with them. Contingent fees are any commission, percentage, brokerage, or other fee that is contingent upon the contractor's success in getting the government contract. And again, the public policy reasons for this prohibition are to discourage the temptation to engage in improper behavior to get a fee for obtaining a federal contract. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it.
Okay. Thank you for a great presentation, Meredith.
Thank you.
To our audience members, we thank you again for participating with us. If you have any questions about this part, please contact our speaker with the contact information seen on the screen. Also, please join us for our signature event on February 10th at the Kennedy Center. The U.S. State Department will be available to meet with you, and we expect 150 federal contractors and hope to see you there. Finally, if you have any questions about federal contracting or need assistance with any of our services, please contact us directly. Thank you again for joining us, everyone. This concludes today's webinar.